The main character of the story is Mukota, a 27-year-old office worker. He, along with 3 students, was summoned to a new world, where a ritual is taking place to summon heroes to save this kingdom. During their skill assessment, they discovered that one person can use a holy sword, while the 2 girls possess magic. Mukota, on the other hand, only has one skill, which he finds ridiculously useless. That is online grocery. Mukota feels disappointed because he thought that coming to a different world would grant him an immense power. The other 3 with their powerful skills are warmly welcomed, while Mukota and his weak skill are ignored. Later, all 4 of them meet the king, who explains that he summoned them because the kingdom is being harassed by the demon. Upon hearing this, Mukota immediately stands up and requests to decline protecting the kingdom, considering his skill to be weak and desiring a peaceful life. As a result, Mukota was fired and sent away, and only receives a compensation of 20 gold coins. While walking on the street, Mukota notices people around him looking at him suspiciously. It turns out that he is still wearing his office attire, so he decides to change into a new outfit to avoid drawing attention. He enters a nearby clothing shop and comes out dressed as a farmer. He then rents a cheap room for the night. While resting in his room, Mukota opens his status board to check it, which displays his skills such as appraisal, an item chest, and the most powerful skill he possesses, called online grocery. Seeing this, he opens the online grocery to see how it works. As he touches the screen, a board appears with an interface similar to online shopping on Amazon. Feeling hungry, Mukota decides to buy a bottle of water and a loaf of bread. After paying, within an instant, a box appears right next to Mukota. He opens it and finds exactly what he ordered. It is at this moment that Mukota realizes how miraculous this skill is and that it is not useless as he initially thought. With enough money, he can buy anything he wants from the online supermarket. Thus, the next day, he decides to leave the country and head to another one. To get there, he takes the first horse carriage ride of the day and meets an old soap merchant on the carriage. When he inquires about appraisal and item storage skills, the merchant discloses him that these skills are incredibly powerful and not everyone possesses them. Particularly, the appraisal skill is a privilege of those who come from different worlds, and only a few major countries are allowed to possess them. Hearing this, Mukota starts to feel a bit frightened and has to change the topic to avoid arousing suspicion about his true identity. Upon arrival, Mukota found that vehicles could no longer cross the border. He then entered a nearby restaurant and sought advice from some adventurous men. Learning that this country was at war, and many people were eager to leave, they advised Mukota to leave before the border closed. Fearing encounters with monsters along the way, Mukota sought out a guild of adventurers to hire a team to escort him to another country. After paying 8 gold coins, he was introduced to a group of 5 people, with Werner as their leader. Impressed by Werner's enthusiasm, Mukota took on the role of cooking during the journey. The next morning, they met at the rendezvous point, introduced themselves, and set off together. They stopped for lunch, and while Mukota prepared the meal using camping equipment and ingredients from online grocery, Rita finds these things intriguing and couldn't help but be curious. But since Mukota couldn't say that they were created by his awesome skills, he had to casually brush off the matter with a vague answer. Despite only having sandwiches and soup from the supermarket, everyone praised the food. It was then they realized Mukota's true value as an escort. After a satisfying meal, they continued their journey and encountered a wild boar. The swift adventurers quickly defeated it, and together they harvested the spoils. Mukota requested to keep all the meat, as it was abundant, and stored it in his item bag. Thus, the first day of the escort ended smoothly, and Mukota continued with his cooking duties. Rumor had it that he would prepare a new dish, arousing curiosity among the group. To keep his online grocery a secret, Mukota asked them to wait outside while he cooked. He prepared meat, cabbage, carrots, and potatoes, and added a few sausages. Once the meal was complete, Mukota also baked some bread as an accompaniment. After setting the table, he invited everyone to enjoy the feast. The result was astounding. Everyone couldn't help but indulge in the stunning meal. Thanks to Mukota, they felt healthier and more energetic than ever before. Mukota realized that the items purchased from the online grocery enhanced their strength. Another day passed, and night fell again. Mukota continued his cooking tasks, slicing the meat, marinating it, and preparing the cabbage. He added oil to the pan and fried the marinated meat. Once the meat was well cooked and covered with sauce, the grilled pork dish was served. Everyone praised the mouth-watering wild boar meat they had never tasted before. Suddenly, a giant wolf approached Mukota from behind, causing everyone to look with fearful eyes. It turned out to be Felnir, a mythical beast, and he demanded that Mukoda offer him the meal. Mukoda obediently prepared more food, and Felnir swiftly devoured it all, requesting more. After consuming dozens of plates, Felnir finally stopped and praised the delicious food. Meanwhile, Mukoda had become weak and unable to stand. Felnir expressed his desire to form a contract with Mukoda because his cooking had conquered his heart. Mukoda initially was scared and wanted to refuse, but under Felnir's menacing gaze, he had no choice but to accept. They formed a contract, and from now on, Mukoda would be obligated to serve Felnir with utmost dedication. Because they had made a pact, Felnir wanted Mukoda to give him a name, so Mukoda came up with all sorts of dog names that made Felnir angry. Finally, he named him Fel, and only then did Felnir accept it. Traveling with a mythical beast like Fel terrified people around them, and the adventurers believed that they would surely be stopped in the neighboring country because there was a legendary story that Fel had once destroyed an entire nation. Seeing Mukoda's worry, Fel reassured him that he would eliminate anyone who dared to attack him. That afternoon, Mukoda continued his cooking duties, and because Fel ate a lot every day, Mukoda mentioned that the meat in the chest was running out. Upon hearing this, Fel immediately went hunting for prey for Mukoda. The adventurers greatly admired Mukoda for being the first person to command the mythical beast. After a while, Fel brought back a giant bird, and Wenner said that this bird was a demon beast, so its beak and claws were very valuable. They then divided the tasks, assigning the task of butchering the bird to the adventurer group, while Mukoda prepared a dish from its meat. He used the leftover sauce bottle from yesterday to cook it, similar to pork meat. After grilling the meat on both sides, he boiled the sauce and poured it evenly over the meat, and thus, the bird meat with onion soup was completed right after. The whole group then enjoyed delicious, and Fel ate up all the remaining bird meat without leaving a trace. After the meal, they continued their journey to the neighboring country. When they reached the border, Mukoda saw many soldiers gathered in front of the city gate, and as they approached, they were stopped by the military. The guard believed that Fel was a dangerous demon beast that would harm their nation. Upon hearing this, Fel proposed a condition that as long as they didn't do anything to him, he wouldn't harm anyone. When the guard realized that Fel could speak like a human, they began to trust him, and eventually they agreed to let everyone in. After a few procedures, they officially arrived in the neighboring country. Upon hearing Mukoda's intention to earn a lot of money to travel and see the world, the adventurers advised him to join the Merchants Guild and register as an adventurer to be able to sell the valuable items that Fel had hunted. Upon hearing this, Mukoda thanked them, and they all continued into the city. To get in here, he also has to pay a tax that would empty his pockets. After a while, he encounters the envoy of the Count, who knows that he possesses a mythical beast and wants to get acquainted with him. However, he doesn't like playing with the people in power, so he refuses outright. Seeing that, the envoy pleads with him to go along. But at that moment Fel appears, making the envoy turn pale with fear. Fel knows that they want to exploit his power for their own gain, so he threatens the envoy to run for his life. Fel's actions make Mukoda and the adventurers slightly worried because the nobles value their prestige. The mission of the adventurers group here is over, so they thank Mukoda and return home. Afterward, Mukoda sets off with Fel to the Merchant Guild. Upon arriving, Mukoda tells the receptionist that he wants to become a merchant. Hearing this, she briefly introduces him to information about the Adventurers Guild. Next, she gives Mukoda a guild card so that he can engage in trading. When everything is settled, both of them find an inn to rest. Unfortunately, tonight Fel has to sleep outside the stable as they don't allow mythical beasts inside at the moment. It's time for dinner, so Mukoda quickly prepares the meal. After preparing the meat, Mukoda craves for rice, so he buys another stove. Since Fel is very hungry, he urges Mukoda to hurry. Mukoda turns on the stove and starts frying the meat with oil. Then he takes the meat out and adds sauce. Unable to resist the divine meat dish, Fel takes a bite and Mukoda continues to pour sauce over the rice, making a mixed rice dish that Fel can't stop eating. It's Mukoda's turn after putting the meat in the rice bowl. He also adds soy sauce to it, completing the pork rice bowl. He then picks up the bowl and eats heartily. Seeing this, Fel feels hungry again, so Mukoda has to oblige him. That night, before going to sleep, Mukoda goes to the online grocery to buy something. The next day, He brings them to the merchant guild, and when the receptionist takes a look, she is very surprised and immediately takes him to the guild master. The guild master is amazed because he has never seen such high quality salt and pepper before, so he expresses his desire to buy all of it to offer to the king, making Mukoda ecstatic. It only cost 5 coins to buy them, but now the guild master offers to pay tens of gold coins. Thinking that Mukoda is hesitating because of the low price, he raises the offer to 15 gold coins. Seeing Mukoda still hesitating, he further increases the price to 17 gold coins. The negotiation is then completed. At this point, Mukoda still can't believe he can earn so much money. With the money issue resolved, he goes to the Adventurers Guild. Since Fel isn't with him, the people there show contempt towards him. After filling out the membership information, the receptionist gives him a G rank membership card. She only explains that G rank is the lowest and only allows him to undertake low-level missions. Mukoda then goes to the mission board, and after observing for a while, he chooses the task of gathering herbs. But before setting off, he has to cook for Fel. He tells Fel that tomorrow there will be an even better dish, making Fel eagerly anticipate Mukoda's new creation. Mukoda tries to appraise his skills and sees that all the stats are impressively high, but he's a bit surprised and considers him just a greedy guy. The next morning was a beautiful day, and Mukoda thought it would be a perfect day to go herb picking. After they arrived at their mission location, Mukoda told Fel to go find something to hunt while he would gather herbs nearby. Not wanting to leave Mukoda alone, Fel used his strength to create a magical protective barrier for Mukoda. After reminding him to prepare a meal, Fel disappeared. Mukoda quickly examined the herbs that needed to be collected, using his appraisal skills to spot them all around. In no time, he had gathered all the necessary herbs. Feeling bored sitting around, Mukoda decided to prepare lunch. Seeing that their supply of monster meat was running low, he used online grocery to purchase some ingredients. Once the ingredients were ready, Mukoda chopped onions and fried them until soft, then added the ground meat to the pot and poured in the sauce. At that moment, Fel returned with a monster bird similar to the previous one, and there were a few more outside the forest, which he couldn't bring back yet. Since Mokuda didn't need monster meat for lunch, Mukoda continued making spaghetti. Once the noodles were cooked, he added a bit of sauce and used the online grocery to buy a jar of grated cheese to sprinkle on top. And thus, the Italian spaghetti with meat sauce was complete. Mukoda explained that this dish was made in his own world, and whenever Fel ate it, he always praised its deliciousness and couldn't stop eating. Meanwhile, Mukoda ate while contemplating the upcoming plans. When he looked up, he noticed Fel had finished eating, with sauce stains around his mouth, which made Mukoda burst into laughter. After satisfying their hunger, they headed to the location where Fel had hunted the monster. It was full of ferocious beasts, including the fearsome ORCs, which made Mukoda a bit scared due to their intelligence. However, Fel assured him that the locals here ate them regularly, so Mukoda reluctantly took some. Once they were done, Fel reminded Mukoda to climb onto his back so they could return to the town faster. Fel sped off at an incredible speed, making Mukoda feel half dead during the ride. Within a short while, they arrived in town, and Mukoda felt like he had reached his final moments. He warned Fel not to do that again. Afterward, they went to the Adventurers Guild to submit the collected herbs. Despite having gathered a lot, the receptionist only paid them a few coins. When Mukoda mentioned that he had a mythical beast as a pet, the receptionist's eyes widened. She then introduced them to a meat trader. They went to the trader to appraise the pile of monster meat that Fel had hunted. Seeing that it was all top quality, the trader offered a high price for the meat. Mukoda then asked him to butcher the entire pile and keep whatever was left to sell. The trader agreed and scheduled Mukoda to pick up the meat the next morning. However, since Fel was craving ORC meat, Mukoda asked the trader to prepare it as well. After a while, Mokuda prepares all the necessary ingredients, thinly slice the meat, and sprinkle salt and pepper on it. Next, crack the eggs into a bowl and beat them well, sprinkle flour on the meat, then dip it into the eggs, and then put it in the pan and flip it over to avoid burning. When it's cooked, he take them out and pour the meat sauce on top, and the pork pizza with meat sauce is complete. Fel enjoys it and praises the dish for being light and tender, which made him eat a lot. Mukoda was initially hesitant because it was ORC meat, which seemed a bit gross to him, but when he saw Fel enjoying the dish heartily, he decided to try a piece and found it very tender and tasty, not as repulsive as he imagined. The next morning, Mukoda goes to the merchant's place and finds that the pile of monster meat has been prepared. After selling the ingredients, he receives over 200 gold coins as a reward. He is surprised because there is so much money, so the old man explains the value of these goods to him. By the way, the old man also admires Mukoda for taming a magical beast like Fel, because no one outside would believe that someone would make a contract with him. Seeing rumors spreading about him, Mukoda thinks it's time to leave and tells Fel about that. But Fel is only focused on food now. As evening approaches, both of them stop to rest and Mukoda thanks Fel for helping him find the valuable items, promising a delicious meal for the night. Seeing Fel hungry, Mukoda provides him with some porridge from online grocery while he prepares a Japanese-style black beef steak. Fel shows a skeptical expression when he sees the small piece of meat, but after trying it, he praises it as delicious. Mukoda explains that the meat is tasty because the cows are well taken care of. After a satisfying meal, both of them are full. Fel says that Mukoda's food makes him feel his body overflowing with power. Mukoda uses his appraisal skill and sees that all of Fel's stats have increased by 50%. Fel, feeling restless, wants to go hunting immediately. He then creates a powerful protective barrier for Mukoda and leaves. At this point, Mukoda thinks Fel will probably return in the morning, so he decides to go to sleep. Meanwhile, after gaining strength from Mukoda, Fel starts sweeping through the forest. The next morning, when Mukoda wakes up, he dares not witness Fel's achievements. Fel explains that he accidentally went a bit too far due to the excessive power from the beef. Seeing that, Mukoda then thinks it's better not to let Fel eat beef anymore. On that noon, Mukoda only served Fel a simple pork dish. Fel found it not very tasty, but when Mukoda added a little lime butter sauce, he finished the plate of meat. After finishing the meal, Mukoda asked Fel about the magic skill he used to hunt animals. After hearing Fel's sharing, Mukoda attempted to conjure a fireball, but nothing happened. Fel asked him what he was trying to do, making Mukoda feel embarrassed. It was then that Fel explained that he had to channel magical energy to be able to use magic and instructed Mukoda to touch himself to feel that energy. Once Mukoda grasped some understanding, Fel said it was time to start training. Mukoda created a fireball, but it disappeared before reaching its target, leaving him discouraged. Fel criticized him for being weak and suggested that he train with beasts to be more effective. However, Mukoda refused because he was afraid that he would become the beast's meal. Fel couldn't accept having such a weak companion, so he insisted on training Mukoda right away. When they came across a goblin village, Fel told Mukoda to go there and test his abilities, but Mukoda was too afraid because the goblins were too numerous. Fel then yelled to get their attention, using this method to force Mukoda to fight them. Fel then left Mukoda running for his life to hunt high-level goblins. With no other option, Mukoda had to use fire to intimidate the goblins before continuing to run and maintain distance. Unexpectedly, he stumbled and thought his life would end there. But Fel's barrier protected him. Mukoda immediately retaliated with a fireball against the goblins. Seeing that it didn't have much effect, he unleashed a powerful fireball, but it only managed to destroy a few of them. This time, Mukoda was exhausted and about to faint, but luckily Fel returned just in time. When he woke up, he saw Fel sitting next to him, and Mukoda blamed him for leaving him alone. Fel then praised his impressive fireball technique. To celebrate this success, Fel brought out a goblin king that he had hunted. He mentioned that they contained magic stones and advised Mukoda to sell them for money and use that money to prepare a lavish meal for him. Mukoda has already exhausted at this moment, so that night he only gave Fel some supermarket cakes to eat. Mukoda then hastily ate the cake because he was very hungry by then. When he turned to Fel, he saw that Fel was also devouring the cake and praising it repeatedly. Without much delay, Fel finished the whole cake and demanded another plate from Mukoda. Mukoda immediately advised Fel that eating sweets like this would cause tooth decay and diabetes. But Fel claimed to be protected by the wind god Ninlil, so diseases and toxins had no effect on him. He proudly declared that only geniuses like him were worthy of divine protection. Feeling unfair, Mukoda bought Fel out and begged someone to protect him. By chance, Mokara's plea was heard by the god Ninlil. The next morning, they entered a town, terrifying the people there. The soldiers immediately detained them, and Mukoda had to present the adventurous card for them to see. They were eventually allowed to enter. They walked into the town, as Mukoda wanted to find a map, so he left Fel in a warehouse. but Fel didn't want to be alone and kept asking Mukoda when he would return. Mukoda said he would be back in the evening, and left a plate of cake for Fel before leaving. Mukoda went to a bookstore but couldn't buy a map. Then he went to the city library, but it was closed. When he arrived home, Fel continuously frowned as he thought Mukoda was back too late. To appease Fel, Mukoda prepared dinner for him. He used online grocery to order 2 dishes made from bird meat and deep-fried wild boar meat. Fel then tasted both dishes and commented on the flavors. Seeing Fel enjoying the meal, Mukoda was satisfied and prepared dinner for himself afterward. The meal was well prepared with rice, sauce, and filet meat. Seeing Mukoda enjoying the delicious food, Fel couldn't help but crave more, so he asked for more food. The next morning, Mukoda went to a tavern to inquire about directions. Since he had nothing to do, he paid for a table at the tavern. Seeing that Mukoda was generous, the others invited him to sit down and get to know each other. When they learned that Mukoda was looking for a map, they mentioned Mokuda, a valuable map given by a previous adventurer, and offered to sell it to him for a small price of 1 gold coin, as a token of appreciation for his hospitality. Mukoda immediately paid 1 gold coin to buy the map. After the group left, the people in the tavern couldn't help but laugh. Mukoda immediately asked them and found out that the map was being sold abundantly at the Adventurers Guild for only 1 silver coin. It was at this moment that Mukoda realized he had been deceived, but it was already too late. Mukoda returned to Fel and showed him the map to navigate. When Fel saw the sea ahead, he immediately thought of seafood. Couldn't resist his pet's craving. Mukoda laughed along, and they set off together. Goddess Ninlil, when observing Fel's close relationship with Mukoda, wondered who he was to become the owner of the spirit beast in her clan. Meanwhile, Mukoda was riding Fel and swiftly heading towards the coast. But due to extreme hunger, he temporarily stopped at a lake to catch fish. Fel approached the lake and used his magic to activate an electric shock. Afterward, Fel told Mokuda to choose any fish he liked. Mukoda thought the fish had died from the shock, but Fel explained that they were only temporarily stunned. Mukoda then approached and caught several fish, which he assessed to be identical to salmon. On the other hand, Fel desired a fish of a different color, but when Mukoda assessed it, he discovered it was poisonous. Therefore, he discarded it, causing Fel to feel regretful. Once the fish preparation was completed, Mukoda gathered firewood and went online to buy flour, butter, and mushrooms. He then began his cooking process by first removing all the organs and washing them with water. Next, he skewered the fish and placed them over the fire. Mukoda proceeded by cutting off the head and splitting the fish in half. After cutting, he wrapped them in silver foil along with salt, various mushrooms, butter, and wine, and then placed them back on the fire. While waiting for the other fish to cook, Mukoda prepared a grilled fish dish. After sprinkling salt and pepper on the fish, he applied a thin layer of flour, then put it in a pan and grilled it for a few minutes. Thus, Mukoda presented a variety of fish dishes. Due to his intense craving, Fel even ate the silver foil, prompting Mukoda to remind him to unwrap it. They both enjoyed the delicious meal. Mukoda also prepared a can of beer to accompany the food. Turning to Fel, Mukoda noticed that he had finished eating and demanded more food. As a result, Mukoda had to interrupt his meal to serve his boss. While Mukoda was about to pee, he accidentally encounters a slime. When he touched it, he found it to be soft and cute, which melted his heart. He used his assessment skill and found that its stats were ridiculously low. Seeing that it seemed hungry, he planned to cook something for it. But the slime unexpectedly headed towards a bottle and digested it, then attempted to digest the pan as well. But Mukoda managed to stop it. Instead, the slime went to the dishes and ate one of Mukoda's plates. Later on, it cleaned up all the trash around, making Mukoda very pleased. He hugged the slime, and Fel mentioned that their recent actions had unintentionally formed a contract. Hearing that, Mukoda used his assessment skill, and noticed that the slime's stats had increased, so he named it Sui. And from that moment on, Sui officially became a member of the group. The next morning, Mukoda practiced his stone magic, but his skills were still lacking. Fel suggested that he engage in real combat once again to see how he improved. But recalling the terrifying memories of goblins, Mukoda declined. Fel believed that if he remained fearful, he would never become stronger. Feeling Fel's slight unpleasantness, Mukoda turned to play with Sui instead. It was then that he noticed Sui had grown a little bigger, and its stats had also increased. Since Fel was hungry, he asked Mukoda to prepare his lunch. So Mukoda served him an ORC meat rice dish. Fel then finished eating before Mokuta had a chance to explain about the cooking ingredients. Sui also had his own bowl. While enjoying the miso sauce, Fel demanded another serving. Sui also had just finished eating, so Mokuta had to continue serving his bosses. After the meal, Sui took over cleaning and washing the dishes. Seeing that, Mokuta was very pleased with that, unlike Fel, who just lay in one place after eating. Once Sui finished, Mokuta served dorayaki as a dessert with green tea. As usual, Fel had the biggest appetite and asked for more cake. It was Sui's first time eating something sweet, so he seemed to enjoy the cake. The next morning, when the sun had risen, Fel woke you up to discuss something important. He said that he had received a message from the goddess Ninlil, accepting Mokuta's request for protection. Mokuta was overjoyed by this news, but Fel mentioned that there was a condition. Every week, Mokuta would have to offer sweet treats to Ninlil. Hearing this, Mokuta was speechless, as he never imagined that a goddess would enjoy eating sweets. He asked Fel about the offering ritual, and he began to explain. After preparing various cakes, Mokuta began his prayer. Indeed, his body felt stronger. He then silently thanked Ninlil for the protection. She was extremely happy holding a red bean cake that she had always dreamed of. When she took a bite, she found it soft and sweet, and the bitterness of the coffee milk complemented the sweetness perfectly. She intended to save some for later, but the delicious taste was irresistible, and in no time, the plate was empty. With the protection of the Ninlil, Mokuta now could easily perform magic, and even his damage output increased. However, due to the limitations of the human body, he quickly became exhausted. To replenish his energy, he had a bit more sweet treats with black coffee, and then rested with Sui, waiting for Fel to return. When Fel returned, he immediately questioned Mokuta about what he had eaten while Fel was away. Mokuta showed him the chocolate bar and explained that he needed the energy because he was tired. Fel couldn't accept Mokuta's eating alone, so he demanded Mokuta use the online grocery to buy it for him as well. While Fel was happily eating, the goddess Ninlil contacted Mokuta directly through telepathy and requested him to offer chocolate to her immediately. Mokuta wondered which deity had such preferences, as he had just completed an offering 3 days ago. However, she responded with an annoyed expression, "Even goddesses have their own preferences, you idiot." So, once again, Mokuta had to use online grocery to fulfill her requests. Ninlil then thanked him and expressed her joy. Fel admired Mokuta greatly for appeasing the goddess Ninlil, as he also desired other dishes. He urged Mokuta to get going. After being launched for a while, in front of them was a dark dungeon. Seeing Mukuta's frightened expression, Fel reassured him that he brought him here for real combat. Since Mukuta had previously fought with fire magic, this time he would practice rock magic. When Mukuta tried to escape, Fel dragged him back. Mukuta begged Fel to forgive him this time, but Fel refused. To ease Mukuta's fear, Fel would create a protective barrier for him, and Sui also encouraged him to reluctantly agree. But before that, Mukuta had to eat something to gain more strength. Seeing Mukuta preparing a lavish meal, Fel thought he was having his last meal before dying. Mukuta claimed that these foods would increase his stats. He devoured various dishes before conquering the dungeon, leaving some cake for Sui. After filling his stomach, Mukuta checked his stats and noticed a 20% increase. Fel then promptly urged him to enter the dungeon and fight. Mukuta confidently wielded his sword, but hesitated when he entered the dungeon. Mukuta's first opponent was a slime, and Sui supported him with an acid attack. With newfound confidence, Mukuta used magic to defeat the slime. The next opponents were a group of rabbits, followed by goblins. They then encountered a pack of hunting wolves, which frightened Mukuta, causing him to flee. But thanks to Fel's encouragement, he returned and used rock magic to defeat the wolves on the spot. Mukuta thought Fel would spare him at this point, but Fel continued to descend to the next level, mentioning that there would be 10 more wolves ahead. However, upon arrival, Mukuta realized their numbers had multiplied to form an army. Mukuta intended to escape, but Fel dragged him back, stating that he would create a barrier for Mukuta to combine forces with Sui and defeat the entire pack. Seeing Sui eager to fight, Fel pushed both of them into the heart of the dungeon. As soon as the wolves spotted Mukuta, they rushed towards him, but Fel's barrier repelled them. Sui quickly launched acid attacks, helping Mukuta gain more confidence as they eliminated the wolves. After finishing off the pack, Mukuta could finally breathe a sigh of relief. However, the real battle wasn't over yet. As the final boss appeared, a wolf leader wielding an axe, which terrified Mukuta. Fel revealed it was the Wolf King, and it was extremely enraged at this moment. Mukuta panicked and tried to run, realizing his rock magic was no longer effective against it. After a fierce battle, Mukoda lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found Sui by his side, expressing gratitude, which surprised him as it was the first time he heard Sui speak. Hearing Sui's adorable voice made Mukoda's heart melt. Upon assessing Sui's status, Mukoda noticed that Sui had also leveled up and improved his stats. However, when he checked his own condition, Mukoda couldn't help but feel disappointed as he was still weaker than a slime. He asked Sui about Fel's whereabouts, and Sui mentioned that Fel was out doing something, but soon enough, Fel returned with a stained mouth. He explained that Mukoda hadn't woken up for a while, so he had to find something to sustain him. Despite still being a bit resentful about the earlier barrier incident, it was almost lunchtime, so Mukoda went to the supermarket to buy ingredients to serve his two bosses. After some shopping, he gathered all the necessary ingredients. First, he chopped onions and sliced the chicken into small pieces, then added soy sauce and spices to a frying pan. Once the meat was cooked, he cracked eggs into the pan and poured the entire mixture into a rice cooker, and thus, the Japanese rice dish was completed. Although Fel had just consumed the monsters, Fel and Sui ate heartily, and Sui praised the incredible taste of the meal, which delighted Mukoda. The three of them finished their lunch, and while they were chatting, Sui accidentally called Fel uncle, which made Mukoda burst into laughter. Indeed, compared to the 14-day-old slime, Fel was undeniably an elderly uncle. Fel pretended to be upset and turned to scold Sui, causing Mukoda to comfort the little creature in his arms to calm its fears. Seeing this, Mukoda turned to Fel and called him a petty old man, seeking revenge for his previous encounters. Fortunately, Sui later accepted calling Fel by a normal name, which eased Fel's anger. The next day, they set off together again, and this time Fel led Mukoda through the territory of two new species of beasts. Hearing the names of the two new creatures made Mukoda frightened. As Fel moved forward, they heard growling sounds surrounding them. It turned out to be a group of ORCs who had surrounded Fel with an aggressive demeanor. Fel warned the ORCs that there would be consequences if they attacked, but one of them didn't believe it and charged at Fel, only to be swiftly defeated by a strike from Fel. Fel then turned to Mukoda, wearing a smug expression. The other ORCs hesitated. Hearing Fel's threat, they quickly retreated without looking back. When Mukoda asked Fel about the skill he had just used, Fel proudly claimed it to be his secret technique. However, Mukoda seemed somewhat annoyed by Fel's expression, so they turned to Sui and praised Sui's acid-spitting technique as the best, leaving Fel speechless. With the evening approaching, Mukoda began preparing a meal for Fel and Sui. Sui, feeling hungry, urged Mukoda to prepare the food quickly. Mukoda patted Sui's head, causing Fel to feel a sense of discrimination. Mukoda took out the snake meat from the previous day to cook, attempting it for the first time. After preparing the necessary ingredients, Mukoda separated the meat from the bones, cut it into small pieces, and mixed it with sugar, wine, and salt. While waiting for the meat to marinate, Mukoda chopped some onions and mixed them with chili sauce. After the meat had absorbed the flavors, Mukoda added a bit of potato flour and fried it in a pan. After a few minutes, the sauce was poured over the meat, completing the dish. While Mukoda was trying the food, Fel thought Mukoda was secretly eating it alone and quickly grabbed the plate, finishing it within seconds. Since Sui was eagerly waiting, Mukoda had to work even faster, and soon the pile of meat was gone, leaving Mukoda with exhausted limbs. When he asked Fel, he found out that both Fel and Sui had finished his portion. Fortunately, there were a few pieces of uncooked meat left, so Mukoda had to prepare them again to serve with bread. The next morning, they continued their journey, and after a while, they came across some healing mushrooms. Fel mentioned that these mushrooms could treat wounds and were excellent for making medicine, so Mukoda decided to pick a few. The mushrooms had a strong aroma, which woke Sui up and made him try a few. Later, after Mukoda had gathered enough mushrooms, he noticed that Sui's body was glowing. Sui said that his body was filled with strength, and when Mukoda inspected them, he discovered that Sui had gained the ability to create healing potions. Fel explained that Sui must have consumed a lot of healing mushrooms, which led to acquiring the skill. Mukoda finally realized the incredible nature of Sui's newfound ability and embraced Sui with affection. Shortly after, Mukoda asked Sui to create a healing potion, and Sui promptly demonstrated by producing a blue liquid. Mukoda used a vial to store it and examined it, finding out that its function was to heal dying patients. Fel explained that it was a high-quality medicine that could treat many injuries. Hearing that, Sui was delighted and hugged Mukoda. Leaving the forest, the group unexpectedly encountered a talking eagle. He said that he had heard Fel was very powerful and wanted to exchange strength with him a bit, using it as a feat to become the leader of his kind. Fel showed no signs of worry and accepted the challenge. Both of them began to attack. Fel landed a kick, causing the eagle to fly high. The eagle then launched some feathers down. However, Fel easily dodged it and waited for him to attack again. At that moment, Fel created a powerful tornado that engulfed the eagle. Mukoda approached the injured eagle with concern, but he reassured Mokuda because this was what he wanted and thanked Fel. Mukoda then used a healing potion on the injured eagle, and he quickly recovered. Seeing the eagle blaming himself for his uselessness, Mukoda told the eagle that he had done well to injure a divine beast like Fel. Hearing this, the eagle roared happily, calling his kind to come in front of his subordinates. The eagle thanked Fel because he now can officially become the leader. The eagle then gave Mokuda a feather and assured him that he would be safe when passing through the forest next time with this thing. After they left, evening fell, and to thank Fel for leading the group through the forest, Mukoda decided to prepare a new dish. First, he prepared a piece of ORC meat, coated it in flour, then dipped it in beaten eggs and breadcrumbs, and finally fried it in hot oil before cutting it into pieces. Lastly, he finally sliced some cabbage and poured the sauce over it. Despite it being very hot, Fel and Sui ate it enthusiastically. Mukoda couldn't stop eating as well. The next morning, the group completely left the forest and found themselves facing a vast plain. Fel quickly flew ahead and unexpectedly saw a group of bandits waiting to rob some guys. Mukoda promised that if Fel saved them, he would have a magnificent feast this evening. So Fel flew straight ahead and let out a roar that made their ears ring, forcing the bandits to surrender immediately. The grateful merchants and adventurers in the group thanked Mukoda wholeheartedly, and upon learning that his companion was Fel, they held him in great admiration. Mukoda inquired and learned that they were heading to the city of Carolina in the neighboring country. Since he was unfamiliar with the roads here, Mukoda suggested going together, and the others were more than willing to help. On the way, they began gossiping about Fel and Mukoda. Seeing them discussing Fel and himself made Mukoda even more worried. He didn't know when the information about them had spread so widely, and Mukoda was afraid that in the future, the information about being from a different world and possessing formidable skills would be discovered, making them a target for pursuit by nations. When it got dark, the whole group took a break, and at that moment, Fel reminded Mukoda of the promise they made in the afternoon. Mukoda then had to leave to a secluded place to serve his bosses. With the meat running out, tonight Mukoda would make use of the remaining intact parts. First, he would slice the meat, then mix it with soy sauce and wine. After marinating, he adds flour and shakes it well. Finally, he fries it in hot oil for a few minutes, and thus the crispy fried meat is completed. Sui praised it for being crunchy and having a unique taste, while Fel only eats heartily. The faint aroma of the meat wafted around, catching the attention of the adventurers. They followed the scent and caught Mukoda eating. Seeing their eager gazes, Mukoda invited them to join, and they ate while praising it for being the most delicious fried meat they had ever tasted. As a result, Mukoda didn't have time to rest his hands as he had to serve them constantly. To thank Mukoda, the adventurers said that they would guard him tonight. The next morning, they arrived in the city of Carolina, and after handing the bandit group over to the soldiers, Mukoda bid farewell to the merchant and set off. Mukoda went to an adventurers guild nearby with the purpose of finding a mission to undertake. Since they hadn't done any missions for the whole month, the receptionist told Mukoda that they no longer had the qualification to be adventurers. So Mukoda had to ask her to register again and include Sui in his party lineup. After leaving the guild, Mukoda went to a monster item shop and brought out a pile of monster items, leaving the adventurers in awe, as they had never seen such a huge pile of monster items in their entire lives. The adventurers asked Mukoda what meat they had tried last night. Mukoda replied that it was all high-level monster meat. The adventurers immediately apologized to Mukoda for eating too much without realizing they were consuming top-quality ingredients. Seeing that Mukoda didn't hold a grudge, they thanked Mukoda and promised to help him wholeheartedly if he ever encountered any difficulties. Later, Mukoda returned to the inn to rest, suddenly realizing that he can't sleep at this time because Ninlil was demanding offerings as usual. Mokuda immediately used online grocery to buy some sweet items and sent them to Ninlil. Only then could he finally go to sleep. The next morning, Mukoda returned to the Adventurers Guild to choose a mission to level up. Fel wanted to select a high-level mission to help Mukoda level up quickly, but Mukoda was hesitant and inclined to refuse. Mukoda asked Sui for his opinion. Since Fel knew Sui loved to spit acid, Fel cleverly tempted the little one into fighting against goblins. Excited by the idea, Sui agreed immediately. With no other choice, Mukoda reluctantly went along to please both of them. The group set off together, and after a while, they encountered 3 goblins. Sui quickly fired shots, eliminating all 3 of them. To prove that the mission was completed, Mukoda had to take the goblin's ears, which frightened and disgusted him. Fel then noticed a goblin village ahead and want Mukoda to fight now. Mukoda, who had already wanted to go back, had no choice but to follow due to Sui's adorable pleading. The entire goblin village was subsequently slaughtered by Sui without a hint of mercy. Mukoda had a hard time collecting all their ears. Fel then asked Sui to clean up the scene with acid, and upon hearing this, Sui unexpectedly grew larger, leaving Mukoda in awe. Sui claimed he could even multiply in 2000s. In no time, the pile of goblins was cleared away. At that moment, Sui mentioned feeling hungry, so Mukoda prepared lunch for everyone. However, feeling exhausted, Mukoda suggested they all have pastries together. He brought out some meat-filled pastries from the online grocery, and while eating, Sui commented that the meat filling was tender and delicious. Fel couldn't help but praise the taste as well, unable to resist its flavor. The group later returned to the Adventurers Guild to confirm the completion of the mission. The leader acknowledged Mokuda's strength and informed him that he had received a letter from the king's palace granting Mokuda freedom to travel throughout the country, on the condition that they would require Fel's assistance in some emergency situations. Mukoda was delighted because he now had his freedom. The leader also expressed a desire to promote him quickly, on the condition that Fel performed several high-level tasks. Seeing that Fel had no objections, Mokuda immediately accepted the offer with joy. Before the leader left, Mokuda sold him some high-quality items. The guild master arranged for him to return the next day to receive the goods and to be given the rank S adventurer card. In the evening, Mukoda continued serving food to his bosses. He decided to prepare a new dish, starting with boiling the chicken meat with sake and salt, then thinly slicing the cucumbers and tomatoes. Next, he took out the cooked meat and tore it into small pieces. Seeing Mukoda struggling alone, Sui also wanted to help him. After finishing the meat, he added ginger oil on top. When the chicken dish was complete, he also made a stir-fried green pepper chicken dish. First, he cut the meat into small pieces and marinated it with some ingredients. While waiting for it to marinate, he sliced the bell peppers, then put the meat and peppers in the pan and fried them with spices. And so, the stir-fried green pepper chicken dish was completed. Mukoda also bought some beer to enjoy with the meal. The 2 bosses continuously praised the food while eating. After finishing the meal, he cleaned up the dishes and arranged a sleeping place for Fel. Since Fel used to sleep outdoors, he complained that this warehouse was cramped. Mukoda immediately got him a cushion, and Fel fell asleep as soon as he lay down, sleeping soundly like the dead. The next morning, Mukoda went to the Adventurers Guild and received the rank S silver card from the guild master, along with several bags of money from the monster horde yesterday. Now he had received a total of nearly 2,000 gold coins, and the guild master added that this was the largest amount of money spent on supplies since the guild was established. Mukoda immediately became worried about being targeted by bandits on the road, so he decided to keep the gold a secret at all costs. As for the guild's mission, they wanted Fel to go and find and defeat the lizards and buffalo. These species were very dangerous, and no one dared to accept this mission. The lizards had impenetrable metallic skin, while the buffaloes usually lived in herds on the plains. When they heard buffalo, both Mukoda and Fel immediately thought of beef, and they became very excited to the point where they didn't pay attention to what the guild master was saying anymore. After leaving the Adventurers Guild, Mukoda went to the merchant he visited before. Now that he had become wealthy, he wanted a nice leather bag. Mukoda was indecisive about which one to choose, so he asked Sui to pick one for him. After looking for a while, Sui chose a spacious brown bag. After selecting the bag, Mukoda also bought a belt and a snake-shaped wallet, and finally a new pair of shoes. The shop owner said that as a gesture of gratitude for saving him last time and treating him to high-quality meat, he would provide everything for free. Then Mukoda bid farewell to the shop owner with a promise to leave him a rare item if he found one. On the way, both of them thought that in order to have the energy for the mission, they should have a hearty fried meat meal, with the addition of a lot of snake meat. Today Mukoda had to feed Fel until he couldn't eat anymore. After marinating the meat with sauce and salt, he put it in a pot and fried it for a few minutes. When he tasted it, he found it crispy and sweet. As soon as he placed the meat dish on the plate, the two bosses finished it within a few minutes. But since there was a lot of meat today, he fried a lot more, and when Fel couldn't eat anymore, Mukoda felt victorious. When the two bosses fell asleep, Mukoda took out the beer to enjoy the remaining meat. Eating the fried meat while gazing at the moon made Mukoda feel like a true wealthy person. The next morning, they all arrived at the mountain where the lizards lived. Fel was familiar with the path, so he knew which direction to follow. When they saw a cave ahead, he immediately rushed in. After observing for a while, they spotted a metallic scaled lizard. Due to its metallic scales, Fel believed that it had evolved. Mukoda expresses his thinking that Fel couldn't do anything about it. Hearing that, Fel felt that he was being underestimated and unleashed a lightning magic spell, causing the lizard to be shocked and immobilized. Although feeling somewhat guilty, Mukoda still put the lizard into the chest. With the presence of various glowing ores around, Mukoda thought they could be used to make armor, so he intended to collect some. Fel felt embarrassed by Mukoda's actions, as he believed that such flimsy armor could not compare to his high-level protective layer. Seeing the lizard hunting task easy, Fel quickly took Mukoda out to complete the mission of defeating the buffalo. When they arrived at the plain, they encountered a herd of buffalo in front of them. Mukoda told Fel to handle it while he and Sui waited in a hiding spot for the outcome. However, when Sui saw Fel enjoying the fight, he joined in as well. Within a few minutes, Sui and Fel had eliminated all the buffalo. Mukoda couldn't help but worry because there were too many buffaloes here, unsure if the item chest could contain them. Afterward, they gathered the pile of buffaloes together and stored them in the chest. As it was almost noon, Mukoda reminded everyone to take a break for food, and then he brought out the sandwiches prepared the previous night. Seeing Mukoda drinking soda, Sui wanted to try a bit too, and in an instant, he finished the soda. Curious, Fel also wanted to taste a few sips, and he praised it constantly while drinking. After finishing a bottle, he let out a burp just like a human, making Mukoda burst into laughter. In the evening, Mukoda returned to the guild to report the completion of the mission. Everyone admired the lizard he had in his hand. They said it was a rare lizard specimen, and its scales might have evolved. Moreover, Mukoda was lucky to find a vein of a precious metal that the lords were seeking. They rewarded him with around 5,000 gold coins, leaving Mukoda unable to believe in his ears. On the way back, Mukoda was worried about his peaceful life being disturbed by owning too much money. But he quickly pushed those thoughts aside to prepare for cooking premium beef. He sliced it into thin pieces, sprinkled salt and pepper, and grilled it in a pan until both sides turned medium rare, then wrapped it in silver paper for about 5 minutes. And there it was, the perfectly cooked medium rare beef. After sharing portions with the two bosses, Mukoda began to enjoy it. The first bite was so delicious that he couldn't resist. By the second serving, Mukoda even added a bit of garlic sauce, making the beef even more exquisite than ever. After finishing the meal, Fel shared that he probably couldn't eat raw meat anymore because he had become addicted to Mukoda's dishes. Mukoda also felt lucky that both of them had helped him a lot since he arrived in this world. After everything was done, Mukoda proceeded to perform a ritual offering to the goddess Ninlil. After preparing various types of sweet cakes as requested by Ninlil, he conducted the ritual. When Ninlil received the offering, she was unexpectedly caught red-handed by her fellows. The goddesses then sent greetings to Mukoda and called Ninlil a selfish person who always ate alone without inviting anyone. At that moment, Ninlil explained that she protected Mukoda, which was why he offered the offering to her. Seeing this, the goddesses demanded to protect Mukoda so that they could have delicious food. They even promised to grant him an incredibly powerful protection that he had never seen before, but Mukoda insisted that one protection was enough for him. However, before Mukoda could refuse, both the earth and fire goddesses had already granted him protection. Only the water goddess remained a bit shy and didn't dare to speak up. Feeling sorry for being the only one not receiving an offering, she became upset, and when the goddesses saw her crying, they comforted her. Witnessing this, Mukoda felt very conflicted. With Sui's appearance, he immediately asked the water goddess to grant protection to Sui instead of himself. Only then did she stop crying and agree to protect Sui. When they learned that it was the strongest protection she had ever granted to the mortal realm, all three goddesses were speechless. They believed that if things continued like this, they would be punished by the deity of creation. To prevent the goddesses from arguing, Mukoda quickly offered them offerings, and within a moment, he replenished all the offerings for the girls, accompanied by words of advice, hoping for their harmony. As a result, the next day, he could easily unleash powerful offensive magic. However, Fel still criticized him for being weak, which dampened Mukoda's enthusiasm. At that moment, he wanted to see how much stronger Sui had become after receiving the protection. Sui immediately performed a water magic that brought down all the trees, astonishing Fel and Mukoda. Seeing Sui's increased strength, Fel suggested that the little try soloing. But Mukoda refused to let Sui get hurt. After that, Mukoda and Sui trained in other magic spells, while Fel went off to hunt beasts. In the evening, when Fel saw Mukoda boasting about building a house, he was speechless because it looked no different from a toilet. The next morning, while Mukoda was recovering his house, Fel asked what they would do today. Mukoda replied that they would go to the Adventurers Guild to obtain some meat. Upon arriving at the location, he received a pile of meat along with money from selling items from the Minotaurs. He also brought the black snake from yesterday to have it cut. Mukoda then prepared a meal to serve his two bosses. He took out a grinder to process a new dish. First, he put the meat in the grinder to make it smooth, and Sui helped him with the task. When he had enough meat, he started chopping onions, followed by mixing milk and breadcrumbs. Then, he added the milk bread mixture to the ground meat along with eggs. He mixed everything together, formed it into a circular shape, and wrapped any excess portions, storing them in the item box. Once everything was prepared, he cooked the meat in a pan, frying both sides evenly. He then steamed it until cooked and transferred it to a plate. Finally, the hamburger was complete. When he took a bite, it was delicious, especially with the melted cheese inside. After finishing the meal, Mukoda went to do the laundry but found that the soap couldn't create lather. At that moment, he had a sudden idea and immediately went online to the online grocery to buy soap and several bottles of shampoo. He divided the shampoo into small bottles and went to the merchant to sell them. He gave the merchant a piece of the soap to see if it would sell, and the merchant found it to be fragrant and potentially marketable. Mukoda also introduced the shampoo and conditioner, making the merchant happy to have found a supplier like Mukoda. The merchant mentioned that his wedding anniversary was approaching, and with a wife who enjoyed soaking in the bath, these products would surely please her. Mukoda was surprised to find that bathtubs existed in this world and asked the merchant to show him. There were indeed many types here, but they were also very expensive, although not a big deal for a rich person like Mukoda. The next morning, when he arrived, he met the merchant's wife, who praised the gifts he had given her husband. The soap smelled like flowers, and the shampoo made her hair smoother than ever. It enhanced her beauty, leading to a passionate night with her husband. Mary suggested that Mukoda sell these items to her because they would undoubtedly sell well. Mukoda couldn't refuse such a cooperative offer from Mary. After discussing the details, he returned to his lodging. When Fel and Sui saw him return, they invited him to conquer the dungeon. But Mukoda declined as he had an appointment with the guild master. It turned out to be a meeting to receive payment, and he received a total of 5,800 gold coins. The guild master mentioned that the metal ore was very valuable, and the lords were willing to pay a high price for it. Looking at the mountain of money, Mukoda immediately thought of the bathtub. Suddenly, the receptionist ran up and reported that a large flock of wyverns had appeared in the western plains. They had attacked many adventurers, causing them injuries and poisoning. When Mukoda descended to the lower floor, he encountered injured adventurers suffering from the wyvern's venom. Without hesitation, Mukoda took out a high-quality potion made by Sui to heal their wounds. The guild leader was amazed to see that the wounds instantly healed upon application, and everyone else quickly recovered from their critical condition. As the guild leader was about to mobilize the entire guild's force to eliminate the wyvern flock, Fel stepped in and declared that he alone was enough. The guild leader humbly pleaded with Fel to save the city. Thus, Fel led the whole group to the location. Upon seeing the wyverns flying in the sky, Mukoda quickly assessed the situation and discovered that they were venomous and could attack in groups. Fel decided to seize this opportunity to train Sui in aerial combat against the enemy. As the presence of Fel was recognized, the wyverns began their continuous assault, but he skillfully evaded all of them. Fel instructed Sui to target the head or wings, and with a single shot, Sui immediately brought down a wyvern. Suddenly, a gigantic wyvern appeared and attacked Mukoda, but fortunately, Fel's protective barrier saved him from harm. Seeing Mukoda in danger, Sui transformed into a larger form and pushed the wyvern away, allowing Fel to swiftly end their threat. After a fierce battle, both Sui and Fel were famished, so Mukoda prepared a meal for everyone. He took out the leftover meat from the previous day to make a delicious dish to enjoy outdoors. After beating eggs and preparing the flour, he coated the meat, dipped it in the egg, and covered it with a layer of breadcrumbs. Then he deep-fried it, creating a savory mincemeat dish with a crispy and breaded outer layer. As soon as everyone took a bite, they could taste the crispiness and the flavorful bread within, making this dish truly delightful. Seeing the bosses enjoy the meal, Mukoda felt very satisfied. At the guild, everyone was currently worried about Mukoda's group, unaware that they were having a feast in the open plains. When they returned to the guild, everyone was already waiting. As soon as they saw Mukoda, the guild master asked about the situation. He said that Fel had cleared out the wyvern, and everyone was delighted to hear that. Fel also mentioned that he was late because he was too busy eating. When reporting the mission to the guild leader, they mentioned that the price of the wyverns would be very high, and Mukoda agreed to sell them immediately and return to the inn afterward. While preparing to go to sleep, Mukoda realized that he had forgotten something. It turned out that the goddesses hadn't received their offerings from him, so they urged him to do it right away. However, each goddess had a different request, so they secretly contacted Mukoda individually. The goddess of fire and the goddess of wind both wanted to eat sweets, while the goddess of earth wanted to try shampoo and soap. The goddess of water wanted to have a meal with rice. As a result, Mukoda unexpectedly put everything together in one box, revealing that each goddess wanted to enjoy their piece alone, causing further division among the goddesses. Seeing this, Mukoda had no words for these pitiful goddesses. The next morning, when they went out, everyone looked at Fel with admiration for his achievement in clearing out the wyverns. Later, Mukoda and Fel went to a bath shop, and after a while, Mukoda chose a blue tub that cost 300 gold coins. Once they had the bathtub, Mukoda decided to take a bath right away, so they went to a nearby forest, while Fel went hunting. Mukoda then built walls with earth and placed the tub inside. He asked Sui to fill the tub with water, and he used fire to heat the water. Before getting in, both Mukoda and Sui bathed first to clean themselves, and then they enjoyed an unprecedented feeling of pleasure together. Afterwards, Mukoda took out a piece of wyvern meat to start cooking lunch. First, he sliced onions and carrots and thinly cut the meat. Then, he added soy sauce, sugar, and wine to simmer. Next, he added both onions and meat and stirred well, removing any foam that appeared. Finally, he placed it on top of the rice, and the special wyvern meat rice dish was completed. Mukoda also decided to make another stew. First, he sliced carrots, onions, and potatoes, and then cut slightly larger pieces of meat. Next, he seasoned them with salt and pepper and heated the pot to melt butter, frying the meat. Then, he quickly cooked the previously sliced ingredients over the fire and added them to the pot, along with the sauce. After a while, the wyvern meat stew was completed. While they were tasting it to see if it was delicious, Fel brought a giant dragon. He knew the meat of this creature was very tasty, so he hunted it for Mukoda to cook. Fel saw that the food was ready and wanted to eat immediately, but because he was too dirty, Mukoda told him to bathe first. Feeling embarrassed for the first time being called dirty, Fel felt ashamed. Mukoda immediately went online to a pet care store and bought some pet grooming items. He asked Sui to transform into a water spout for convenience. With the slimy water spout, Fel's body quickly got wet. Then he enjoyed the enthusiastic care from Sui and Mukoda. As a revenge, Fel splashed water all over Mukoda without needing his help to dry off. After bathing, the next step was drying. Seeing his handsome boss, Mukoda couldn't help but admire him. But his only main concern at this moment was the food. He put the stew pot on the stove to heat it up and then served it with rice. Seeing Fel's doubt about this dish, Mukoda served it to him, and as soon as Fel took the first bite, he praised the meat as incredibly delicious. Sui commented that the sweet and sour taste of the dish perfectly suited his palate. Mukoda said that from now on, he would bathe Fel once every 2 months, which made him unhappy. but when Sui complimented his handsomeness, Fel reluctantly accepted it. The next morning, Mukoda brought the dragon to the guild to be appraised, but they said that all the items from it were so valuable that they didn't dare to butcher it for fear of damaging them. The guild master then directed Mukoda to another guild where they had the expertise to butcher this earth dragon. Coincidentally, it was located near the sea, so both Mukoda and Fel wanted to set off immediately. Fel was eager to hunt a giant octopus and a sea dragon. Seeing Mukoda now resembling a professional adventurer, they couldn't help but laugh. Mukoda then bid farewell to the merchants and the adventurers guild to get started on the new journey. And that was the recap of the anime series named Campfire, Cooking in Another World with my absurd skill. If you enjoyed it, hit the like and subscribe button to support me. What is your favorite character in this anime series, or what topic that you want me to do next? Don't forget to let me know in the comment section. Thank you, and see you again in the next videos.